Let's see.
Well, how do we
What's a
start body horror?
yeah? How we start body horror? Oh,
How do we
Brandon,
start body horse?
tell us about your toe.
Oh yeah. So I don't know how this happened, but a few days before my Orlando trip, there was a cut on my toe, and I was like, I'm going to Orlando. I can't deal with this. Uh, I'm just gonna wear two pairs of socks that day, and so I wear two pairs of socks. I come back from Orlando, and it's like spewing a little bit of bile, and I'm like, that's not good. And I go the day after to the urgent care near our house. I won't say where because I don't want our fans to track us down. Um,
Just go find the urgent care by the largest mansion in LA, and that's
Yeah.
the one Brandon went to.
the Muppet Haunted Mansion. And they were like, "Oh, you got a cut underneath your toe, like the side of your toe." And I'm like, "What? Like where?" And they're like, like the part between like, yeah, it's like your toenail, like it was underneath, and it's now flabby, and it's releasing stuff, and it's infected a little bit, just a little bit. So they were
How
like,
did you
"Here's
get
some."
that?
I don't know. How does it get under there? And then they were like, well, here's some cream, and it cleared up after 3 days, but it took me a little bit, and I was like, why is this? Occasionally hurts, but it looks fine. It's not infected anymore.
So
That's pretty bodily horrific, if you ask
yeah,
me.
I think that was the greatest intro to Stacked ever.
Brandon's toe bile story.
It looks good now. I know you're not into feet,
I'm so
but
sorry, everyone. That
well,
was,
you told me to say.
I know it's my fault. I'm so sorry. I really dropped the ball with this intro.
Yeah,
Welcome
you really
back to
did.
Stacked episode 62, part 3 of the Halloween-a-thon. We're
Unconventional.
back for unconventional.
Yeah.
Okay. Part 3 of this Halloween-a-thon with another horror centered topic. We've done gaslighting movies, pretty horrific. We've done horror comedies that makes you laugh, but all is going to be kind of horrific. And now we're diving more into like sort of a mode of horror, a subgenre, which is body horror. Like I feel like people fear mutilation of the body and
Not
how
us.
fragile we as human beings really are. So filmmakers have been able to really like tap into that and make some pretty disgusting things, using special effects and whatnot, or even more psychological stuff. I think with my stack, I sort of dive into multiple forms of body horror, and I'm interested to see what you guys have brought to the table. Brandon, what was your? You said this was a tough stack, didn't you?
I think it's tough just because, like, I feel like, for me anyway, like, I haven't necessarily been as... Not that I'm not into body horror, it's just, like, I feel like it's such a small subgenre.
Right.
To find, like, very popular movies from, and, like, that's where, like, most of, like... I feel like I chose very conventional choices for body horror, Mutilation
really?
of some kind, yeah.
Mhm.
And, yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now.
Okay. Chris, what about you? Are you a big body horror fan?
No, I am not a big body horror fan. It's actually one of the few subgenres that is like, just in its concept, is immediately repulsive to me because this
Yeah.
is like for
I
me
like
like
it.
when I okay for sure, Brandon. But like when it comes to like the world of horror for
Damn
me,
you.
like creepiness is so easy for me to get on board with. I could watch ghosts, ghouls, goblins, what have you. I can
Yeah.
watch all that forever, and it will scare me, but I'm always entertained and always very kind of like I'm not like immediately adverse to that. But body
Right.
horror is a little bit more difficult for me because oftentimes body horror really gets to me. There's something about like the fragility of the human form that is so it just gets under my literally, yeah, it gets under my skin, like it really just creeps me out. And there have definitely been some movies that have been incredibly unnerving to me on this level. And yeah, that's kind of like I kind of just went with the idea of like, let me share some of the movies that I have seen that, have put me in that state of mind. And that's how I went about it.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think we're going to talk about some very unique movies that we haven't talked about yet on this show. So, before we get into our picks, let's, of course, go into what this show is all about, the rules of the show, what we do here. Once a week, we set a topic or theme and go our separate ways to construct our own 3-film stack. Then after a week, we come back here on the podcast and share our own stacks one film at a time. Then at the end of the show, we will mix and match our 9 films to make the ultimate decision what quintessential 3-film stack we are checking out this hypothetical video stewer. Guess who's first? It's baby Brandon. Brandon, you're first, honey. Can you talk about your first body horror pick, Brandon? Can you come out from behind the mic, sonny? Brandon, come here. Come here, son. I picked up Brandon from Disney. I picked up Brandon from Disneyland today. I was like, time to pick up my boy after work, because I just got off.
I don't work there. Oh, I thought you were saying.
After I got off work, I'm like, I had my fucking briefcase and everything through in the car. I'm like, yep, time to pick up my son from work. Yeah, got a good day at the theme park.
Mm-hmm.
So
I did.
Baby Brandon, son, baby Roy.
Yes.
Oh wait, I also have to shout out.
Oh. Okay.
This was suggested by someone, number 1 Stacked fan, Caroline. The old ball and chain, if you will. She's going to kill me for saying that.
So true. So true.
Shout out.
Body chain.
Woo!
Ball and chain.
The old ball and chain.
All right, shut up.
All right.
I'm going to be...
Ethan. Ooh. Okay.
He's in the doghouse. Ooh.
All right, guys.
Factory. Anyways, Brandon, yeah.
Yes, I felt like I needed to choose an iconic film of some sort that represents body horror and kind of give it this new name. So I'm going to pick a Saw film.
Oh, which one?
I'm picking Saw 6.
Ooh.
Spicy.
There's some gnarly stuff in that one.
There's some gnarly stuff in here. If we're just going by how gruesome it is, it's probably... The later Saw films are pretty gruesome, but like 7 and like Jigsaw kind of lose their teeth, I feel like 4, 5, and 6, the kills are like, or 3 too, but we already chose that, are all like really gruesome films in terms of body horror, because it's like Jigsaw playing with their psychological capacity as well as their physical one. Like in the film, and I hate to spoil it for you, Ethan, because I know you haven't seen anything other than Jigsaw, or not Jigsaw,
or the first Saw.
Spiral and the first Saw. So you've seen the last one, you've seen the first one. But there are so many good kills in this one, and there's one where contestants have to cut like body parts off of themselves and put them on like a level, like a not a lever,
like a weighing scale,
like a weighing scale, in order to like live, because whoever gives up the most in pounds is able to live. So that's pretty gruesome, because they have to take apart their own bodies, and it's like not Jigsaw doing it to them, or not the cops in the story doing it to them. There's one where this guy is tied up to a contraption and he can't breathe, and then and then they crush him. They crush the other guy because only one of them can live, but one of them is asthmatic, and the more this guy breathes, the more that guy dies. And they have like a time limit on that one, and that's pretty gruesome. And like what is the carousel of death?
Carousel. That one is, yeah.
That's a psychological body horror situation, because it's not necessarily the most gruesome of kills, and they're not self-inflicted wounds, but it is very disturbing and shocking to see. And then there's this one where they're in a very hot obstacle course, where this lady has to be guided through with like a time on her thing that will shoot something into her face if she can't get out in time. And she's going through this and being like burned alive by all this steam on this obstacle course in the effort to try and get out. And so all of this plays to this body horror element you see in the Saw films, which is kind of what they're known for at this point. They're not really known for their plots. I mean, they're very, Chris, what would you say, convoluted?
They're very, like, it is of the most intensive family soap opera you'll ever see. It's ridiculous how, like, like the littlest like hint at something in like the second movie is the entire plot for the fifth movie, if that makes any sense.
What?
Like, it's like they hop between timeline. The Saw timeline is like as confusing as like the X-Men timeline. It's really weird. Yeah, dude, this is a great pick, Brandon. And I think one thing I really appreciate about this pick is that I think this movie dives a little bit more into like psychological, like horror, in the sense of like a lot of these traps we see through the eyes of the main character, and we're kind of brought along this journey where he has to make the decision about
He knows
who
all these
lives
people.
and who dies. Yeah, he knows all these people. So I think like that adds another layer to this whole, you know, the Saw franchise, because like the Saw franchise, I think like on top of, yes, its kills and its really gruesome visual style, I think a lot of what draws at least me back to it is seeing kind of like the philosophy of Jigsaw come through, which is a really twisted philosophy, but one that at least is interesting to think about. And I think this one does it, at least relative to the other ones, decently well.
This is my second favorite of the
this
Saw.
is one of the better ones within the franchise. Yeah, good pick.
All right. Yeah. Someone who's only seen the first Saw and literally the last Saw. 6.
You like to play a game?
How many? There's 9 of them, so 6
Yeah.
is like... Yeah, totally. This one's probably a good one. Great stuff in this one.
But they all, but like, despite them being convoluted in their plot, like they all do kind of stand on their own with their subplots.
Really?
Yeah, because like the subplots with the traps, you don't affect the main story all that much.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Another thing going for it.
Cool. Alrighty. Saw. Yeah, I was expecting a Saw movie on the stack. Maybe it might not be the last one, but we'll see. All right, my first film is it's a French film. I'm going a little artsy again, like I did last week with Diabolique. I'm doing a 1960 French film directed by Georges Franju. Have you guys ever heard the film, or you've probably seen the poster, Eyes Without a Face?
I haven't seen the movie, but I know
I'm not
of it.
either. No.
Yeah. So the movie basically surrounds a doctor whose daughter got into like a horrid accident and scarred up her face, and the doctor kind of goes mad with trying to save her and like save her face. So he like, the film's about him like following these women who keep getting kidnapped by this doctor, and for a 1960s French film, like the scenes of the doctor kidnapping these women and like doing surgery on their face to peel off their face, like you see it in full detail for a 1960s film. And this is just like one of the most early instances of body horror that I could think of that like really made my body like squirm. Like it's kind of unnerving, these scenes, and like it kind of, I feel like, Chris, remember Goodnight Mommy? I feel like
Yes.
I think the tone and vibe of that is very similar to Eyes Without a Face. I wouldn't be surprised if like it took some direct adaptation. Like even the main character, the daughter, wears similar bandages and like a face mask similar to the mom in that movie, and you just you sort of try to figure out who's crazy here, who's in the right. I mean, you know that the doctor is fucking insane, but it's sort of like sort of a survival for these women who keep getting kidnapped, and like the detectives who have to try to find it. And it's sort of a thriller, but I think it's more body horror because like I was immensely impressed with how much went into the makeup and special effects of this movie, especially being for like a 1960s black and white French film. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a very unsettling film. It's very quiet and eerie. And I highly suggest you guys check this movie out because, like Diabolique, it's just like, like mid-century French horror. Just like, it gets into your brain. I don't know. It's very interesting. Brandon, what have you heard from this movie? And like, I don't know. What do you think?
I know Edgar Wright really likes this movie.
Yeah.
And he always talks about it being an inspiration for him, and I especially hope so with something like Last Night in Soho, which capitalizes on that 50s, 60s nostalgia. It's coming out soon. And I mean, what I expect from a horror movie back then is different, I think, than what you'd kind of expect today.
Definitely.
Because they can't really play with the same stylistic, like, although there was a lot of experimentation back in the day, like especially in French New Wave, we talk about it a lot in our film classes before we graduated, right? I think there was more of a focus on keeping it able to be watched by people instead of like, so it was more of like an eerily creepy vibe than something like outwardly terrifying, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll find that like visual flavor to like strike a chord and like scare the audience, but like to me it's not like something that is like viscerally terrifying, like I can't get away from sort of thing. Not like a slasher movie of the 80s, or not like a ghost movie of the modern age. But you know, as a body horror, I don't know how much of it is in like actually body horror, because like in the 1960s they were so limited.
Yeah. So it's very like foundational, I would say, to the subgenre of what they do in these surgery scenes. Chris, what's your take now that you've heard about this film?
Well, like the thing that I've kind of realized is like a lot of these movies that I have been thinking about are ones that tend to exist in like the post 2000s era. So like it kind of going back to like, when did you say this movie was made?
1960.
Like, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see that kind of stuff being made, because I mean, I guess because it's French, it might have been exempted from this, but like I guess because of like the Hays Code prior to this, like, you know, it might have been really hard to be making movies of this type.
Yeah.
But it's probably really cool to be able to see this kind of stuff. And like I Googled it quickly, and like the visual style looks like I don't know, the black and white eeriness of it. There's something eerie about this look, and I think that looks awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely would check this out. It's only 84 minutes too.
Oh, it's a tight watch. Yeah. Tight watch, and I love those kinds of movies. Yeah. So that's my first pick. Chris, what is your first body horror film?
All right. Before I get started, I am going to say my movies, as I start to when I end, are going to get better in quality, because this first one is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, but it's disgusting.
Yeah. What is it?
This first movie is a sequel to a cult classic. It's from 2011, directed by Tom Six. It is the Human Centipede 2 full sequence.
Oh my god.
Okay,
I've never seen a single one of these.
You haven't seen either of these? Brandon,
No.
have you seen any of these?
I've never seen any of these, and I might put them on my list of never want to watch, even though I'm interested.
We gotta watch them. Brandon, we should do a triple feature. There's only 3 of them.
Oh,
right?
no, dude. They're terrible. They're so terrible. Then the first one is at least tolerable, but the second one makes me want to like throw up, and the third one is just hilariously bad. Like
because
the third one,
it's
you laugh
meta.
at.
I've heard it's meta.
Well, okay. Well, let me get into this, because like the second one's also a bit meta too. So, I thought the first one was disgusting, but this one really dialed it to another level that I wasn't even expecting. Mm-hmm. So, that first movie had this kind of like gross, sterile look to it, you know, very kind of dull and drab. But this one is like a black and white nightmare of disgusting horseshit. Like everything, and I mean literally everything in this movie, is designed to make you feel uncomfortable and repulsed. This movie takes place in this kind of like distorted reality where the first movie exists in the world of this movie as a movie. Like it is a movie that this character, the main character watches.
Whoa.
So the main character's movie is this dude, and he is inspired by watching the Human Centipede to start recreating, and not even that, elevating the first film, because he thinks the first one is like, I can do that better.
What? Really?
And, oh my, I don't even know how to explain this, but in case anyone here doesn't know, I'm sure you guys both do, but if anyone listening doesn't know, this movie is about gross human experiments where people are surgically joined ass to mouth. And
couldn't be me.
Yikes. Couldn't be me. Anyway. Where was I? Yeah, okay, this movie is just obscene. There's things in this movie that make me squirm just to even think about. Let me tell you, I mean, characters eat food in this movie. And what happens a little while after you eat food? I'll let your imagination take hold. But yes,
it's all a different kind of body horror.
Yeah, this movie is like, ugh. And like all the terrible things this character does is supposedly spoiler alert, is supposedly explained by this kind of brief mention, throwaway mention of this guy having a very troubled upbringing, and the environment supposedly kind of conduced their existence. You know, I guess they're kind of trying to do like a la like Clockwork Orange Joker kind of, you know, justifying bad behavior.
Yeah.
But none of it feels even somewhat justified because it's not explained or felt at all by the audience. It's completely just gross from beginning to end, which I guess is the point of this movie.
Yeah.
I guess, like, you know, like, you go in, like, what do you want from Human Centipede 2, right? Like, I mean, what were my expectations? Like, I can't really ask for anything other than what I got, and I got what I asked for, I guess.
You asked for this? You asked for this?
You went to the studio and you said, "Hey,
I totally asked for this.
You guys need to commission this."
Yeah, this franchise is disgusting. It has a niche cult following, so it's interesting to know that there is a market out there for this kind of stuff. But it's really not for me. No hate to you if you like this movie, but not for me. Frankly, I don't even encourage us to pick this movie.
What? You just wanted to mention it?
I did want to bring it up for conversation's sake because it's such a random movie and I fucking hate this movie and I wish it didn't exist. But fuck me, it does body horror really effectively, which is why I chose to bring it up.
I think that's a good choice. I think it's a good choice because it's a different kind of body horror, right? You're playing with the grossness of like a human experimentation and like feces and fecal matter and throw up and stuff like that. That's true.
Feces and fecal
also
matter.
And it's sometimes different.
What's the difference between feces and fecal matter?
Look it up.
There's like poop and there's poopy. You know what I'm saying?
There's diarrhea and there's like hardcore, you know?
Oh, and there's Hot Brown Rain.
Yeah.
Rain Ghost.
But with another reason is like there's like you think there's only one way that they could do this movie, and technically there is, like it's just the same movie but with like the meta-ness of the movie existing in the film, you know, the actual movie of the first one existing in the second one.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's kind of an interesting way to take it, so it could be an interesting movie. It just depends on if you can stomach it or not.
Watch Brandon and I try to put this now in the final stack. It's like, yeah, I fucking dare you. No. Maybe. Maybe. Do you have any takes on Human Centipede 2? I don't know.
Got any takes on mouth in the ass?
Do you? No regrets. You know what I'm saying?
No regrets. I don't know. I've always wanted to watch these movies. I think they're silly. They sound silly. Who thought of these? It's based on a book, right? Is it based on a book?
Dude,
why? Who?
Dude.
Oh.
Is it based on a Wattpad fan fiction that Netflix adapted into an original movie that they then, you know,
which was then spun off into an original television show adaptation, which was then adapted into original film, a Korean film, and then was brought and translated over to Austria, and then was, anyways. Yeah, I don't know. Human Centipede. What else is there really?
It was based on a graphic novel. No, they made a graphic novel after the fact. The hell?
Wow. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. So it like Human Centipede is so famous. It is what it is, you know. Not much to say there. I want to watch them. Come on, guys, let's watch them. Would you watch them all with us, Chris? If we did like a Norm of the North style marathon?
I think I don't know if I can do that one.
Really, you can do it
Honestly.
again?
It's so much. It's too much. Like
Wow, weak. No, just kidding.
yeah. Yeah, I don't want to watch 12 people get their ass and mouth surgically conjoined, Brandon. I'm sorry.
It's a movie.
It's just
It
it's
is a
just
movie.
a movie.
It is just a movie.
Grow up. Nah.
But yeah, that's my first pick.
Valid. Yeah. Cool.
That
Great.
must have such a hold on you
Hey,
because
hey,
like,
bad-
it's
bad-
fake, but it's like it's very intense. That's what I like about it.
Good pick, bad movie. You know? Good pick, bad movie.
Honestly,
That's the rule can finally come in. Good pick, bad movie. All right, Brandon, let's go to your number 2.
okay.
Speaking
I'm
of feces
picking...
and fecal matter, number 2.
What? Okay.
That's going. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, my next movie is a movie I like. I got to pick another body horror movie from another body horror director. I'm picking a David Cronenberg movie. Picking The Fly.
Yes, I knew you were gonna pick The Fly. Let's talk about it.
I love this movie because not only is it a movie that is like just a decent movie, like it has the 80 horror movie vibes when, like, for example, Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist. Like, it has the same vibe as that movie where it's like honestly like a magically wholesome film at its center, like with its story about like a scientist wanting to do more and like falling in love with somebody. And that is a very like you don't see that often in horror movies. You don't see often romance and horror mix like that. And then it like descends into this psychological maddening thing because of somebody's obsessive need to do more, and his fear is suddenly accompanied by his body turning into a human-sized fly. And his, like, literally throughout the movie, his body is falling apart. He's developing like scales and like like stuff. What are like they're like hairs, but they're not, you know.
Yeah,
that
it's like
are
the fly.
on
It's the feelers. They're like feelers,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. He's developing those, and he's like contorting, and his face and skin is falling off, and it's like super disgusting and gory, but also like kind of tragic and humanizing in a sense, because like you would think it would be dehumanizing because that's what most body horror does, but like I kind of feel like it's in the end like just a sad tragic story with like a human undercurrent to it that is very beautiful, and that it made me cry when I watched it, which is like one of the only horror films that has ever had like an emotional hold on me like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I chose it.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, this is David Cronenberg's best film. No question about it. I love what you said about like sort of the more he becomes a monster, you feel like the more human you start to feel for him. You know, cuz you can feel the pain and the tragedy of this character. He's sort of an arrogant scientist going in beforehand, you know? But as you start to see him lose lose touch with reality and sort of his instincts as a fly, it's sort of just, it's so tragic. And this movie would not have worked as well if it weren't for the amazing special effects. Like,
You actually think he's turning into a fly?
Yeah, it's some of the most amazing special effects I've ever seen in a film ever. Just with this insane transformation of Jeff Goldblum. And when it all comes to a head at the end of the film, you know, it's just like, wow, how did they do that, you know? It's just like, movies are magic, you know? You're terrified, but you're like, movies are just fucking magic, you know? That we as humans are able to do that and make us believe it, you know?
Would you believe it?
Would you believe it? Can you believe it? Yeah, amazing film. Such a good film. Chris, have you seen The Fly?
No, I've only actually seen one David Cronenberg movie, and I've only that one is Scanners.
Ooh, yeah.
So I have not seen The Fly, and I've been meaning to, and I've also been meaning to watch Videodrome because I've heard that's really good.
That was one of my picks for body horror. I'm not as big of a fan of that movie, but like the body horror in that film is kind of intense. Yeah.
Wait, so did you just tell us one of your picks?
Yeah, did you just tell us your pick?
No, I was considering picking that film.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I think because you okay.
The way you phrased it
for a
made you
second I was
sound
like,
like,
oh, he just-
that's
yeah,
my
so
pick.
I picked
was
that
like,
one. That's my pick. Anyways, no.
Yeah, but The Fly, like I've heard great things about this movie. I mean, from you guys obviously, but I've heard like even just outside, a lot of people have really praised this movie. And like you said, Brandon, like I've read like a review of this movie, and they talk about a lot of people have been talking about how it's like miraculous how all of this horrifying stuff is kind of like always in the backdrop of a very delicate human love story or something.
Right.
Yep.
And yeah, like I can imagine you could really probably dive into like this kind of tragedy and like this like and what like how dehumanization like is like the opposite side of the same coin of humanization.
Yeah.
I don't know how better to say that, but you know, yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
It's sometimes or somehow humanizes him more because like throughout the film he doesn't act like a good person and he's not very likable other than him being like Jeff Goldblum. You know, he plays a very similar character to Ian Malcolm from the Jurassic Park movies, except less likable and charismatic. And the more the movie goes on, the more you like feel bad for him because of like, and he starts to like when it sets in, like he starts to like shed layers, like literally and like, figuratively, like physically and mentally. And I think like some of the best body horror is like more than just body horror because it like affects you on like you physically like have a reaction to it, whether that be crying or vomiting or shitting.
Feces or fecal matter, either one.
I brought it back around.
Yeah, amazing pick, Brandon. All right, I'm gonna go into my second pick here. It's a film we've all seen.
It's video.
I'll be interested to see if you guys think this is a body horror film. Excuse me. I think it is, even though it's not really explicit in the body horror itself. I think this taps into a more psychological horror of a physical transformation. I'm picking. Chris, you wrote about this for Melodrama. Pedro Almodovar's The Skin I Live In.
Oh.
I would consider this as body horror.
I could call this a body horror movie.
It's very different from what we've discussed.
Yes.
I'm trending in that direction. I don't think horror, but I think mutilation. But I also am like.
But that's also kind of body horror.
But it's
That's
also
body
very
horror.
confusing.
Mutilation
It's
is body
also,
horror.
but it's also very confusing to categorize as that because
I
of
think
like his history as a director and what he is like going for in the movie. It's very confusing.
Yeah, because like it's a movie with so many gray areas, honestly, of who you really believe is in the right. I'm sorry,
Nobody
everyone
is
who's
really?
listening. If you haven't seen this movie, I don't want to spoil what happens because like
Yeah.
if you haven't
Yeah.
seen it, it's so shocking. Like the development.
It's
So basically,
so twisted.
yeah, so basically you're introduced to Antonio Banderas, who is this skin doctor. He's like this famous skin doctor, and you think he's working on this new plastic surgery skin formula that's like that gives the patient like the toughest skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
To fight malaria
see-
or something.
to fight malaria, like it's like to fight mosquito bites or something.
This
And-
movie is obsolete now because they just got a vaccine for that. But you know, whatever. Just kidding.
Well, no, because it's not about that. It's not about that at all. You know.
I know it's not. It's not about piss.
So you see this girl he's with that he's experimenting on with the skin. She's like wearing the similar face masks and stuff to know what I just talked about with Eyes Without a Face. Good Night Mommy. And you're just trying to figure out what is this girl's deal? Why is she here? What's the situation?
She
And-
appears to be locked up. You know.
She appears to be trapped. So you're like, what is this guy doing? Do you think he's like sort of a villain? It's sort of the beginning of the film paints him in a bad light, and then you're introduced to this whole backstory of why this woman is here and what is her deal and why she looks the way she looks, why she's wearing that mask and stuff like that. And it's horrific. It is absolutely horrific, but also sort of satisfying as a revenge film, you know? It's so hard to say, you know? It's so hard to say what it actually is, because you're not like, revenge film? What did this girl do, you know? Like, but, well, it's something, all right, you know? It's something. And
Yeah.
just the process of her being trapped by this doctor is somewhat satisfying, but also traumatic, which I've never felt that way in terms of like a horror film, you know? I don't know. And like I love Almodovar. I think his films are brilliant. Very I don't know, it taps into like a very broken human spirit, the films that I've seen of his, you know? And I can't wait for his new one, by the way. That movie looks great. And he just has such an eye for cinematography, I believe, you know? And it just like, I don't know. I fell in love with this film when I watched it the first time because it blew me away so much. We've all seen it. Chris, I think you saw it before Brandon, so what's your take on The Skin I Live In?
Yeah, it is. This was definitely kind of like a very, unnerving movie to watch because like I watched this during my melodrama class, and up until that point, all of the films that we had seen were like these very like expressive, romantic, you know, kind of movies, and then we get hit with this, and it was a very, very like kind of like a whoa kind of movie to watch because it was like the shit that goes on in this movie. I'm gonna try my best not to spoil because I really feel like you got to see this movie blind. This movie is twisted as hell. And yeah, you were right, Ethan. This kind of like seeing this movie through like the lens of like body horror is definitely quite a unique like lens, but like one that really works for this because so much of that is less, I mean, yes, it is, I wouldn't necessarily use the word graphic, but it's I don't know, like
it's traumatic.
Traumatic, yeah. It's very emotionally, especially like you can feel how the horror of the mutilation is certainly tied to the physicality of it, but it's the emotional fallout of that's really effective.
Right.
And I think that's, and you know, it's actually kind of weird, you know, this movie is kind of equally parts body horror film as it is melodrama.
Yeah.
Which those two don't really go together very often.
Not
if ever,
at all.
Honestly, I can't think of another one. But yeah, I think this is a great movie. It's actually, I think, my favorite of Pedro Almodovar's films. Actually, no, Pain and Glory is better, in my opinion.
I think so too.
But Skin I Live In is fantastic. I think this is one of Antonio Banderas' best performances, other than Spy Kids and
Puss in Boots
and Pain and Glory. But anyway, yes, I think this is a great pick. It is definitely a bit of a twist on body horror, but one that I think is close enough that it falls into the category and still different enough that it reinvents it. So you got my vote.
Hell yeah. Brandon, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because I can't say anything about the body horror
it's hard.
film, which is
It's so hard to dart
the
around.
difficulty is because it's like you can talk about how good the movie is, but you can't talk about why it's good.
Yeah.
Because it'll spoil like the element of the film that we're talking about, which is a very important plot point that you don't really see early on. It's not gory at all. Like it's not a very gory film, and like there isn't really like a lot of standard stereotypical horror, but I guess that fits Almodovar because he's not really a stereotypical director. He's an auteur.
Yeah.
And his films always tackle identity. So it is like a psychological form, but what happens, I guess, classifies as through trauma body horror. And it's excellent in that sense. So I think it counts.
Yes.
It's a very unique choice.
I did it.
It's like on the outside edge, but it's in there.
Yeah, I knew it was so outside.
That's what she said.
Fuck you. It's so much on the outside that I had to include it. So outside of the box. All right, that's my second pick. Chris, what is your second pick?
Okay.
All right. Before I begin, let me tell you guys, I came across this movie because I watched this video by this guy on YouTube called Wendy Goon. He did this video where he kind of broke down categories of the most disturbing pieces of film ever made.
Uh-huh.
At the top of the iceberg, which is like the most surface level of the body horror, quote unquote, of the disturbing movies, you have Conjuring, you have Babadook, you have Saw, you have your classic horror kind of things. Next is like Texas Chainsaw. You keep going. Bottom is snuff films. So you can see how far this shit goes. You know what I mean? There are 8 levels. This movie is the one movie that has taken me to the furthest depth of this thing. And as soon as I watched it, I could not go back. I will never go back. I don't know if I could ever willingly go back there again.
Really?
I went to a level 3 and I couldn't take it.
How many levels are there?
8.
What?
Wait, is this a game?
It's just like this guy did like a ranking.
Is this a game?
Like a ranking of like the most gruesome at the bottom and the most
so it's like one of those icebreakers.
accessible at the top, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you guys as well. I found this movie on and this movie is available on Canopy and on YouTube, so it's available to watch.
Okay.
And I turned this movie off a third of the way through. I could not finish it.
So you haven't even finished the movie?
I have not even finished this movie.
Whoa.
But it was too much that I had to turn it off after the first third. This movie is from 1989, directed by Japanese director Shinya Tsukamoto. It is Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Oh, I've heard of this movie.
I've never heard of this movie.
Oh God, how do I explain this movie?
This is a weird situation.
Yeah, so this is a Japanese movie about a curse that is passed on to a man by a character whose only reference name is Metal Fetishist. That is literally this character's name. And through this curse, this man is slowly transformed into this kind of abomination of metal and flesh. And it is incredibly graphic. There's a lot of very graphic imagery on this thing. It's absolutely gruesome with no remorse for humanity. There's literally not even a sliver of it. It feels like a horror manga that came to life in the most grindhouse extremism, body horror exploitation way possible. It's very unsettling. It's shot on 16mm black and white film, so that kind of gives it that kind of like grunginess. That works really well for this film, honestly. Yeah, dude, it is very repulsive. It's kind of like Eraserhead and To 10 together. In this kind of sick and twisted abomination of a thing.
Wow.
So because of that,
you're selling it well for us.
I am. Yeah. I do feel like I'm selling this well. So why am I pitching this movie even though I haven't even finished it and I can't personally recommend seeing it? Is that it is morbidly enchanting. Because in that third, I could not take my eyes off the screen. It was like, I felt like I was watching someone get murdered while watching this movie. You almost like can't help but look. And even though I couldn't finish this movie, I have a lot of like kind of like this kind of twisted respect for Shinya Tsukamoto for having the kind of creativity and bringing this kind of twisted vision to life so grotesquely in a way that I could never even think of. Like he does stuff that like I could never even, that like my nightmares have nightmares about. This director's career has actually grown a lot over the years. His last 2 feature films actually premiered at the Venice International Film Festival, both of which were Japanese indie horror dramas. His most recent film was a period-based samurai horror film, which sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And I really want to give that a chance. So yes, you know, this movie, not for me, but I have a lot of respect for it, and I did want to bring it up just because this kind of cult classic doesn't really get talked about ever, and yeah, just want to share this with you guys. Ethan, you said you've heard of this movie. What have you heard about this movie?
So all I've heard about it was my friend Zoe and friend of the show Sellers. They've seen the film. I remember they logged on Letterboxd once. and I was enamored by the poster and the background picture. This sounds right up my alley and a challenge that I want to take to watch this. Like, I don't know. This is really getting me jazzed. I like taking these challenges. I want to dive into the iceberg, man. I want to see what it has to offer.
Yeah, are you going to go to level 8 though? I don't know if level 8's a little like unfair, like it's a little morally
I don't
testing
squirm.
to watch.
I've seen a dude cut off his legs live in an art museum. Is that like
that's technically a snuff film? I
Yeah.
guess. Wait, you said live? Like you watched it?
Not live. Sorry, he was recorded himself and it was
live.
filmed live, projected in an art museum in Montreal. And that kind of scarred me. Like, I can't get those images out of my head. But I'm kind of glad I watched it because it's a very, I don't know. I feel like I really grew up as an enjoyer of art in that moment, watching that very traumatic moment for him. He was drugged out of his mind and he just hacked away at his legs. I don't know. This seems right up my alley. I'm deadass. Let's watch it after the show. Just kidding.
Nope,
Chris,
no.
you're like, nope. No.
It's only
Nope,
99
I'm
cents
not-
on
No.
Apple and 99 cents on Amazon.
No, but it's on YouTube, right?
And Canopy.
Oh, I thought you said just Canopy.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, because we're locked out all Canopy now. We're graduates past our prime.
Oh.
I miss you, Canopy. Let me back in. Brandon, what do you think about this?
I love body horror movies. I don't really have a squeamish stomach. And I honestly, when Ethan and I went to see Titan, that was the most entertaining. And it's got body horror in it, and we were just looking at each other the whole time. We were like,
Really?
it was so fun.
Yeah,
it was
that
so
movie
fun.
Chris, shout out to Jack Roll, fan of the show. I can't believe you saw that movie with him.
Dude, I'm not kidding. Like I was like, because I was really geared in. Like, all right, I want to bring Jack to the movies. We gotta go to the movies, man. And I was like, yo, you ever heard of this French movie called Titan? And then he was like, no, let's check it out. It won the Palme d'Or. All right, I'm down. And then the movie started. I was like, wait, this is not at all Jack's kind of movie. And I was like, as soon as it was like the first 2 minutes, I was like, wait, shit, what did I just do?
What did I just do to Jack?
Dude, that's where you gotta know your audience. Just saying.
I don't know.
Because it's like, now you're never gonna be able to pick a film again unless it's like,
Nah.
No Time to Die, right? Because like, you don't want to torture Jack with like Titan. Did he like it?
He did tell me though he hated it, but he's glad he got to see it because he had never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you get a win somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
But
This is a good pick, Chris, because like I think it expands our palette a little bit more. Where I think integrating Japanese horror, especially body horror, is like big because in the late 90s, early 2000s, even the like late 80s, like there's this pop punk aesthetic, and I took some Asian horror classes, and I can tell you, it was a big part of their movement. Like into.
I mean,
the
you can
modern...
see it in anime too. I mean, Akira.
Right, exactly.
That's a big body horror movie.
And also, like, isn't that it comes from like their traditional cultures. I remember we were talking about old. There's that art style of that is like that lady in the cave. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, Junji Ito. Famous Japanese horror storyteller. And there's no doubt that M. Night Shyamalan borrowed from him in that scene in Old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, it's like that we should be recognizing it because it's such a huge part of that piece of cinema.
Right.
And it sounds interesting because, like, I like the idea of taking the human body and saying something with it if it's for fictional purposes, because I feel like if I knew it was real, it might be a little bit harder to stomach just because like you have to separate your emotions from the physical horror, but that is like in itself very dehumanizing, and I try not to do that because all the movies that we've talked about so far, although it interests me because it's dehumanizing, like the idea of body horror, it's like it doesn't contain the substance of something like Saw 6 or something like what we've already mentioned with our other films. So yeah.
Right. Well, alrighty.
All right.
That
Round 3.
what a surprising pick. I'm jazzed. I'm really jazzed. All right, let's get into the final round here, Brandon, with your last film.
Speaking of Japanese cinema, I went with a 1999 film. I've called it.
I've called it.
I named this movie.
Brandon named it. When Brandon was born, this was his first words, actually.
It came out 6 months after I was born.
Yeah.
Audition.
Oh, I need to see this movie.
It's a very controversial Japanese horror film by Takashi Miike, based on a novel, and it's basically about a actress who is not taking advantage of, but getting revenge on abusive men in places of power. I feel like it still has its meaning because of what's happened with the Me Too movement years later. Like with that all coming to the forefront of Western society. But I feel like back then, like it was very much ahead of its time in the way it was depicting this stuff on screen, because there's this emotional depth to what this character's doing. And although you don't necessarily agree with the lengths that she may go to and the way it is portrayed on screen, it is definitely that emotional catharsis that victims of trauma may, I would say, kind of root for in a film like this. It is a very gruesome movie, especially the last few scenes, because at first it just starts out, you're like, this isn't very scary. It's just a very dramatic thing with a few creepy sequences from here and there and how it's depicting and portraying a person.
Yeah.
But the more you unravel this lady's story, the more you unravel the people that she used to know, and you see all these body pieces, and you see like bodies like half decayed, but like they're alive, and it's kind of like, are they ghosts? Are they real people? I don't understand. And then the last scene, I don't want to spoil anything, but it involves some torture, and it's very, very disgusting and amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, as much as I am a big fan of Japanese cinema, just like even outside of animation, I have surprisingly not have seen a lot of horror. And this is a big blind spot for me because I know how celebrated it is in the horror community, and sort of the torture and revenge film community. All I know is the poster. I've tried to stay away as much as I could from the plot details because I want to be as blind going in. But she's holding like a syringe or something in the poster, right? It's like that yellow poster.
That's from later on in the movie. I won't say when, but it's from later on. Because the beginning of the movie is more of like, it's a mystery, it feels like.
A mystery.
A mystery.
So you're trying to piece together like why she's doing this, but basically,
or like who she is, at first, and then it plays into like the whys and hows.
Gotcha.
And it's interesting because it does play into like emotional storytelling, and it also is like unraveling this societal picture that Japan and Western society is going through with the age of the internet and the age of entertainment changing, and that's very interesting too.
Yeah. Oh man, I need to see this movie. I got a lot of movies to watch during the Halloween season now, just from this one episode. Chris, what do you think about Audition?
Never even heard of this movie until this very second. Yeah, I mean, like the Japanese like horror is such a it's one of those, like you said, Ethan, it's one of those genres within Japanese cinema that I have not really dived into very much. Like if I had to like really kind of think about it, like the only Japanese horror films I've seen are probably, I mean, the one that I mentioned just now, Tetsuo the Iron Man, and like I don't know, like The Ring, like the original version of The Ring.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of like random other movies here and there, but I think there is something to be said about like Japanese cinema and how horror is tied so much to, like how the horror genre in Japanese cinema is tied so much to their society and how their reactions to like a lot of their contemporary era social issues or cultural like kind of things going on that inform the horror. Like we said, like Ethan, we've talked about like how in our old horror class, Professor Finch like kind of like discussed how great horror is informed by real life horror.
Yeah.
And I think Japan is kind of a perfect place for that because they have endured so much shit over the last couple of decades.
Oh yeah.
And it's just an incredible, like, it's a place that you can really dive into kind of like the best and the worst parts of our humanity. And I think Japanese horror is the place to be for this kind of stuff. And I can totally imagine that Japan, being as kind of effusive with their art as they are, being really good at doing body horror. And I can only imagine what they do in this movie. And I mean, I'm sold, yeah.
Hell yeah. Oh, such good work, everyone. Such good picks today. Such good, fascinating picks for body horror. All right. Well, I'm going to go with a classic here to wrap up my stack. It should be no surprise what film's coming. I haven't mentioned this film since the first episode of the show. It's been 61 episodes since I've talked about this movie.
It's been 87 years.
It's been 87 years. It's my third favorite movie of all time. John Carpenter's The Thing. Come
Did
on.
we
Yeah, The
pick
Thing.
it?
No,
No,
we
we
didn't.
didn't.
We didn't
I
pick
picked it for
no.
pandemic movies, remember? I was an idiot. I don't know why. I don't know. I tried to be creative. I don't think it worked out for me very well. I remember I got shut out in the first episode. Yeah.
That always stuck with you, huh?
Yep. Yeah. There was no... This was the biggest, most obvious pick for the stack for me. I wanted to save it for last just because it is pinnacle science fiction body horror. The greatest special effects I've ever seen in a film. It is just so well directed, so atmospheric. The body horror sort of elevates the anxiety that's induced throughout the film, the mistrust that all the characters have towards one another. There's a reason why games like Among Us is so popular, because like just the notion of like who can you trust, like who is the quote unquote imposter in this situation.
Sus.
So who is sus? You know what I'm saying? I hate that Among Us has basically ruined this movie for me. I gotta say,
Your mom likes the sus word.
What the fuck, dude? Shut up.
She tweeted it.
Shut up, man. No, but like, there's a reason why that game's so popular, because this form of like, sort of horror storytelling is just so engaging and it hits you so well, and I guess it works really well in video game form too. But I'm not talking about Among Us. I'm talking about John Carpenter's The Thing, one of the most fundamental horror films, in my opinion, the most perfect horror film. Every character is utilized perfectly. Acting is amazing. Special effects blow me away. Even after rewatching it like 100 times, I'm always blown away by the effects. I'll always have a good memory, boys, of November 1st, the day after Halloween. Our film analysis class was canceled, but the theater was still rented out, so we snuck in there and we played The Thing just for the three of us in that private theater.
Yeah, we also brought in food.
We brought in food. That was the first time you saw it, Chris.
Do you remember do you remember your Snapchat of what I said when you
What'd
when
you
we were
say?
in the theater?
No.
You were filming like the screen saying John Carpenter's The Thing, and then
Yeah.
as you were like panning over to like see like, hey guys, check out, like we're in the theater.
Yeah.
I said T-minus 15 seconds till John Carpenter says the N-word.
Cut this out.
You might want to cut that, by the way. But
I'm not cutting that because that doesn't happen.
that's true.
No. Say
No, John Carpenter does say the N-word
just-
in that movie.
But
he's not in the movie.
He's not in the movie. You troll. No, but amazing movie, guys. What do you think of The Thing, Chris?
I mean, when I've only seen this movie once, that one time, and holy moly, yeah, I was blown away, like, I mean, it's Among Us as a movie. It had to be good.
Yeah.
But no, like, seriously, it's very
Came out
well
before.
made. I think, Ethan, the interesting thing for me about this movie was that throughout all the years that this movie has been out, I have never had this movie spoiled for me. I never knew what or who or like the monster is or whatever, Like
Yeah.
I the only thing I really knew about this movie is that it's about a virus that infects a person and you don't know who they are, and there's a lot of like your classic John Carpenter eeriness to it, and it had some very, very excellent special effects.
Yeah.
And yeah, it delivered and well more. It is fantastic. I had such a great time watching it. When was the movie released, Ethan?
1982, the greatest year in cinema.
When movies from I think like I always will feel that any movie that was released before I was born, to me, if they have stood the test of time in such a way, that's when I know a movie is so powerful.
Yeah.
That decades after their release, it can still have a deep emotional effect on someone.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you know this is something.
It's
and
funny
this was
because
definitely something special.
it bombed because it came out the same
People
summer as E.T.
hated this movie. They hated
Everybody
it.
they wanted the cuddly alien E.T.
They all wanted E.T., yeah. Came out
they
the same
got-
day as Blade Runner, and they hated that movie too. It's insane. Brandon, what do you think about the
justified.
thing? No, yo mama, shut up. To be fair, they watched a really horrible first cut of the film. The original cut of
to
Blade
be
Runner
fair-
is god-awful.
Blade Runner 2049 is a better movie than any Blade Runner movie.
There's only two of
So,
them. What are you
I
talking?
agree.
I mean the cuts.
Guys are crazy.
Any Blade Runner.
Crazy.
No,
They're both
not.
masterpieces, but one's
no,
just,
they're not.
just a little better. Just a little bit.
Okay. Well,
You're
the
wrong.
thing, I remember seeing this movie randomly. I remember pulling when I was in high school and like figuring out what I wanted to watch. There were so many popular movies out there that I would like pull movies out of hats and just like randomly, if I was in the mood one night, I would just watch it no matter what. And I pulled it up on Netflix and I remember being instantly enraptured by it. I bought it on Blu-ray as soon as it finished playing on Netflix. Because I knew it was an all-timer, and I feel like as long as you're not like totally against violence in cinema, this movie is for you. Like anybody could watch this movie, and this is like universal,
Yeah.
because it's such a compelling narrative, and then not only that, you're showcasing real stuff on screen. I think where horror has kind of lost a little bit of its teeth is in the fact that they're not willing to show stuff on screen because they don't want to get that hard R or NC-17 rating. And I think back then it wasn't as much of a worry because studios were willing to take risks because it was the beginning of the production code. Like you saw that with stuff at the end of like the X rating, where like they'd be willing to take risks on things like Clockwork Orange. That's a very intense movie, but like it still got made and greenlit. And now with The Thing, like you've got a very compelling narrative here. Excellent body horror with physical, practical sets. It's not digital like modern era. And I hate to complain about that, but it's like a lot of horror movies today, they're not horrifying and the body horror doesn't stick out because it's like
It's not tangible.
it's not tangible. And that's like you don't have a reaction to it because it just becomes so second nature. And that's why like people are like violent video games dehumanize it in that sense. And I just think it's like it doesn't make it have pain, it doesn't make it have tragedy, and it doesn't have meaning. It feels senseless,
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's a problem all the time, but a lot of the time it is. And here it's like every kill is impactful, every kill is memorable, and the body horror is meaningful because each of those people you learn to care about in some way or form because they serve a part on the team in that Antarctica facility.
Yeah, you feel for them
So
when they get distrustful, and you feel from them when they are revealed as not who they say to be,
Mm-hmm.
It's tragic, and it's scary, and it's thrilling, and it's just a perfect movie
Funny.
on all scales. It is kind of funny. There's a good amount of good laughs in this movie, I'd say. It's like it's just the perfect mix of everything. Couldn't ask for anything more. Couldn't.
No romance.
No There's bromance. Come on, there's all these men. There's romance there. They kiss their homies goodnight. Come on. There's nothing like
then they
watching
get-
porn and smoking weed with your boys in your your pajamas in the middle of nowhere
They
in
kiss.
Antarctica.
Not COVID cool. That's all I gotta say.
And that's why it's not a perfect movie. It's not COVID cool. Okay, that's my last pick. Chris, let's wrap this up with your final body horror film.
All right. So with my first two movies, I really took body horror as a prompt very seriously because they were both kind of extreme versions of that. This one still pretty horrifying, but maybe a bit more levity. And I also can realize, in a way, one of my favorite movies ever made is a body horror film.
Oh.
I picked a movie from 1988 that I think, we all love this movie. Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira.
There we go. Wait, did we never picked this for a final stack?
We've never
We didn't pick this for anime movies?
No, we had too many good anime movies.
Oh my god. All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Akira, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, this is quite a companion piece, actually, to Tetsuo the Iron Man, because, well, first of all, Tetsuo is the name of the antagonist in this
You're
movie,
right.
and he also transforms.
Very similar transformation.
They were released a year apart from each other.
Holy shit.
Both in Japan. So I guess 1988 and 89 was a weird year for Tetsuo's.
Must have been on the top of the world.
There are hundreds of ways to analyze this film, and I think this movie has fulfilled such a unique place within the world of Japanese cinema, because I think it really has shown, especially for its time, how it's such a sophisticated encapsulation of post-war Japanese history, echoing through animation and across the world. This is one of the most celebrated anime films ever made. So yeah, spoiler alert, this movie takes place in a vision of Tokyo that's on the brink of chaos in a post-nuclear future. One of the main characters, Tetsuo, runs into an escaped government experiment which gives him supernatural powers. He loses control and becomes a metamorphosis between flesh and metal until eventually losing complete control and leaving his material body behind. Almost like a year ago now. A year ago now. Over a year ago now. I took a friend of mine from back home to see this movie in theaters because they were doing a rerun of it in theaters, which was amazing. Yeah. He had never seen this movie before, but he knew it had a beautiful visual style and was really interested to check it out. But he got a hell of a lot more than he thought he was going to be handed. This movie for me is so meaningful because of how its themes are presented and how many angles you can analyze it from. Yeah. And if you kind of the way that I kind of thought about it in this kind of, in relation to body horror as a subgenre, is that Tetsuo as a character, and especially in his final form, to me is kind of like an allegory for Japanese industrialization and American occupation that drastically reshaped Japan, and how within Tetsuo's kind of final form, body and industry become one terrifying image of how technology has greatly affected Japan's cultural identity. Mm-hmm. And I think taking body horror and relating it to such a soft-spoken piece of Japanese history, because frankly this is Japanese industrialization post-war is something that is talked about a lot in their contemporary movies, post-war movies, but I feel oftentimes it's a lot more subtle, a lot more soft-spoken, a lot more gentle and more internal. But this one is purely external, and many films deal with post-war Japan, like Godzilla, showing the monster as something that threatens Japanese culture. But this film certainly does that too. But this movie also shows Japan through Tetsuo and a being that is unimaginably powerful and capable of creating new identity from the growth of Japanese industrialization. And I don't know, there's something kind of empowering about that, and how you can kind of see that through Canada and Tetsuo being kind of opposites of one another. And I don't know, there's a billion ways to analyze this movie from, and we can probably talk about this angle for hours, but I'll digress. What do you guys think of in relation to body horror?
Yeah, this is fundamental piece of Japanese cinema, I would say, in an understanding just how they interpret post-war, post-nuclear, just life and the trauma that caused. I've never thought about the body horror in this movie being sort of a fission between man and industry. You do see that a lot in, not in a body horror way, but in sort of just in Japanese films in general. Sort of you see these characters taken over by the industry, brought upon them by American occupation, and how that rapidly changed the outlook of how Japan operates, you know, and just sort of the looming fear of their annihilation and destruction, and what that does to, you see a religious aspect, you know, in the film. You see sort of cultural icons. I mean, the red cape that Tetsuo wears, you know, come on. Like, I feel like the red cape is pretty synonymous with an American hero. And I feel like it could be interpreted that way, of why he wore that, you know. I think that is a nod to Superman. And just like how dangerous what the American mentality did to Japan, and how it has honestly scarred them, you know. I'm so glad we're gonna get to talk about this film, because the animation is beautiful. The backgrounds, come on, like the designs, and sort of the blend between psychological and body horror, I feel, you know, because reality manipulates itself around Tetsuo when he gains these powers, and so does his own, like, the physical forms of things around him, which is just insane. It's so good. Brandon, you're a big Akira fan. What do you think?
I'm a big Akira fan. I don't think this qualifies, personally.
Well, why?
But here's my reasoning. You know, with like all the films that we're talking about, like, I felt either by the way they've been described or how I've seen them, like the body horror has somehow affected me in some way, whereas the body horror in Akira, it hasn't given me like a visceral reaction. What? And it didn't. I remember seeing it and thinking, yeah, that's really like interesting and cool to present the concept in this way.
Yeah.
But when I see, it's basically like the last like half hour where all like the body horror stuff happens, and like it's horrific in like the psychological sense for me to see what happens to this guy, because it's very similar to like The Fly and that character's journey, you know, Jeff Goldblum's character in that movie, in the way they kind of descend and transforms into monsters because of their situation. But I don't think it necessarily qualifies as the horror aspect personally, but I think Chris makes a good argument, because of like the horror of post-warism, but like that's, to me, it doesn't feel like it's physical body horror, as like it doesn't combine both of them in my opinion, but like you guys could see it differently, and that's fine.
Dramatically disagree. I think the body horror does explicitly reflect the horror of the post-war.
It just doesn't feel like that big a part of the movie, you know. Whereas like all the other ones, it feels like integral to the plots.
I feel like it is integral. Like, him using these powers and losing himself in his physical form is basically that's the plot of the movie, you know.
No, but like it's like the last half hour, basically. Like the rest of the movie isn't like integrated.
Well, I would say that,
like, whereas every other movie,
I would say that in The Fly, the last half hour is where it gets really gross.
No, I'm not saying. But when you have a Cronenberg movie where he's slowly devolving, because like it's like an element of the movie where like he physically is deforming because he's gaining all these new abilities and stuff and experimenting on himself for the entirety of the movie. It's not just like
Same
the
with
last
Tetsuo.
10 minutes.
But
it doesn't have that. Like, it doesn't have that.
It does, because it's him experiencing reality differently, and the body horror is happening around him until the end, where it goes onto himself. You know?
Oh. I don't think it's that horrific, personally, but that's just my opinion. I don't want to get in an argument about it.
Yes, argue about my
argue about it. I don't know how you don't see this as body horror. It's blowing my mind. It's like
it's not a horror.
It's
movie.
Traumatic. How are you saying that The Skin I Live In is body horror? How did I convince you of that, but not this one?
Because that feels more traumatic to me somehow. Because that's like a different kind of body horror.
You don't think what the Japanese people had to go through in the post-war era isn't traumatic? You're like, no big deal. Nope, shaking his head.
You're putting words into my mouth.
Putting words in his mouth. Okay. All right, we'll wrap up this this argument. Great pick, Chris. I think it's a great pick. I think it's a fantastic pick. I was considering putting it, but I thought we picked it for a final stack, which is why I didn't. But apparently we didn't. I checked the thing. We didn't. We're crazy. What did we pick for anime movies? We did. Did we do Your Name? Eva, Your Name, Perfect Blue? Perfect Blue, right?
And and I think we did a Satoshi Kon movie, Paprika.
Paprika. Yeah, we did that one. Okay. All right, well, there are all of our body horror picks. What are we looking at? Hour 16. Man, this is a long episode. So let's run through our films one more time before we get to picking out this final stack. Brandon, let's kick it off with your picks.
All right, I had Saw 6. I had Audition.
Mm-hmm. No, we're doing it out of order. You bastard. You can't do this to us. God damn you. All right, mine were Eyes Without a Face, The Skin I Live In, and The Thing, 1982. Chris?
My movies were The Human Centipede 2 full sequence, Tetsuo the Iron Man, and Akira.
Alrighty.
Wow,
Ooh,
what a selection.
What a selection. This is going to be hard. Oh, man. Okay. We got to have The Thing in there. It's required.
I think it is because of how it affected people and historically. Like, I feel like whereas like the infancy of body horror started with like early slashers in the 70s and, you know, the Eyes Without a Face, stuff like that, I feel like this is like foundational.
Foundational for the cosmic horror of it all, the existential horror of it all, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we got to have Tetsuo the Iron Man in this one. That blew me and Brandon away.
I agree.
I need to see this movie. That's just, it's crazy. And yeah, I think we need to have it. And then we need something a bit more, I don't know. What do you guys think? What is there any like things that are just glaring out that we need to have in this body horror section?
Okay.
Nothing else.
We have
me, but Brandon, what do you have?
Here's what I'm thinking, right? We have something Eastern and older. We have something Western and older. I think we need to find a modern film.
Yeah.
True.
So
yeah,
because like I feel because body horror has kind of evolved since then. Not saying like either film isn't like important or interesting in its own way. Like Chris's might be the most extreme. We don't know. I don't know. Right. But the way Chris reacted to it makes me think it is, and especially since it's on that iceberg on like the third level. I think we need to find a modern film that kind of strikes a balance between the two.
I would be okay with Saw 8. I mean, it seems like you guys really like that one. Saw 6, not 8. That one's Jigsaw, right? It's not even.
I would say I would, because we can't choose The Fly because it's too similar to The Thing. I think.
Yeah. I want it though.
And Cronin. No, yeah, it's like it's great. It's probably my favorite of the ones I picked, but I don't think it fits well with the stack.
Yeah.
Well, it fits well with the stack. It's too samey.
It's too similar.
If we're taking Tetsuo, we can't take the Fly.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to find.
It's like it's similar. It sounds like it's similar to Tetsuo in themes, but then similar to The Thing in sort of practicality and execution. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say Audition, and I'm not just saying that because like those are my two films, Audition or Saw 6, because both are modern takes on the horror genre. They take it a little different. Also, Skin I Love, and that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Human Centipede
that one's very different, you know?
Maybe we should pick Human Centipede. No, here. You want to hear my reasoning? We never have to talk about it again.
We never will. No one's.
When will we? I don't know if I'll ever bring that shit up again.
There's no pressure to ever. There's no pressure to ever talk about it again. Everyone's like, all right.
But also, it's like because like all of our other films, right? for example, like we might want to use Audition again once you guys
Audition
actually see
and
it,
The Skin I Live In for like revenge movies or something.
Exactly. Yeah, and then with
Ooh.
I don't want to. I know I picked this movie, but I don't really want to give up Akira right now.
yeah, because
Yeah.
there's so much you could use.
There's
Akira
so much you can
for.
do with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not like for that one either, because it's like
That's
not
okay.
only do I disagree with the thesis, I want to use it for other stuff because
Yeah.
there's other movies that we could.
I think it made for a great conversation about its body horror elements, but I think it sounds too similar to also Tetsuo the Iron Man, not just because it's Japanese, but in terms of like the execution of its body horror.
Yeah.
You know, like
so it's either
Man
Saw
and
6 or
Machine.
Human Centipede.
And they're
2.
both named Tetsuo.
And both Tetsuo. That's right. I mean, Saw is a pretty foundational body horror franchise. I feel like that's the first thing people think of when they think of body horror these days. I would be okay, even though I haven't seen it, and I'm not really.
But what else
interested
would
in
we
Saw.
use? Sorry, I just knocked my mic.
It's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, listeners. He just punched his mic, yeeted across the room.
I don't know, because like both. When are we gonna use both of them again? You know.
Yeah.
Because like I don't think I'm ever gonna. Maybe, but like, what do I use it for?
Saw movies.
Some.
There's 9 of them. We can each pick 3.
You could. But we won't, because like
no.
4 of them suck dick.
All right, let's do Saw 6. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
You guys
Yeah.
seem to be down with that one. I think.
Yeah.
I think the torture element is something we haven't really talked about.
It
in
is
body horror.
psychological.
It's
I don't. Is
psychological.
Tetsuo?
It's sort of
Oh,
torture porn.
Tetsuo the Iron Man is just graphic.
Okay. Well, I guess you've got a mixture of psychological horror in terms
The
of.
Thing is also pretty
Thing.
psychological. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is philosophical, whereas the Thing is not as much as a philosophy.
Saw 6 is philosophical.
When you dive into
actually,
Jigsaw,
kind of
it
is,
kinda
yeah.
is. It's a little
Yeah.
twisted, but all
right.
not a good philosophy.
6
but-
is no the sixth Saw movie is the most philosophical of the Saw movies.
Yeah, I would agree.
Gotcha.
I'm
Okay.
so. But what order?
What
should
order?
we start with the bang, or should we leave that till the end so our viewers can quit like Chris did?
If only I knew how Tetsuo the Iron Man ended, but someone hasn't seen it all the way through to tell us how it ends. So I don't know where to put it on the stack.
I can tell you, I know how it ends, but I haven't seen it.
Oh,
Or
really?
is it a good
Okay.
ending?
It ends with a.
Don't
with
tell
an,
us the
it
ending.
ends.
Don't tell us the ending.
Do you want me to tell you? I don't know.
No,
No,
don't.
I want to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna watch it.
Okay. Low key, based on what I've heard, it's not the worst ending.
Really?
It's an exciting
Okay.
ending. So I've heard.
Oh,
Well, let's
Thing
kick.
has a good ending,
Let's kick
too.
off with Saw. Okay,
classic.
classic. Everyone knows Saw. Let's go into Tetsuo the Iron Man, because the ending to The Thing is just so good.
It
You
is.
know,
yeah.
it's so.
You're
good.
gonna end up waiting through the whole credits, not because you know.
You just sit
think
there
that-
because you're just trying
you're
to
just-
think. You're trying to just
and
reconcile.
you like it.
Yeah, you have
It's
your
the
own
greatest-
theories. You
It's
know?
the greatest respect you could ever give a filmmaker, and it's not really a long credits either.
No.
So
All right, let's do that. Oh hell yeah! Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. This is Stacks, real trapaholics, real traps shit. Damn, son, where'd you find this? Body horror picks. Starting with Brandon, kick off our stacked with our first. Where'd you find this?
our first film is Saw 6.
And our first film.
is Saw 6 a foundational body horror movie because it takes place in the body horror franchise that made it popular to begin with. It's got gruesome kills, a philosophical and psychological narrative that will make your head spin and body squirm.
It will make your head spin and your body squirm. Yeah, okay. Hell yeah. Chris, what's our second film?
Our second movie is Shinya Tsukamoto's 1989 cult classic, Tetsuo the Iron Man, a movie detailing the story of a man whose flesh is metamorphosized into metal, an incredibly graphic and visceral assault on the senses in some of the most disgusting and repulsive ways possible. I recommend it.
That's right. I need to see this movie. I need to see it. And our last pick is the iconic horror film, cornerstone science fiction horror film, John Carpenter's The Thing. The movie that implements psychological horror, paranoia, anxiety by physically projecting that through body horror and some of the most disgusting but impressive special effects you've ever seen. It is a film, like we just said, that will make you want to sit through the credits and just bask in what you've just watched and what it means to you. If you haven't seen this film, get some help. What's wrong with you? Go play some Among Us, watch this movie, you'll have a good time, okay? Don't worry about it. Yeah, John Carpenter's The Thing. That's it. Boom! And that's our stack, baby. That's the episode. Thank you all for listening to our third Halloween-a-thon episode for this year. Tune in next week for... We have a special guest coming in next week. I'm not going to spoil who it is, but if you... I don't know, if you like a certain character, if you follow me on my other podcast, you might know who it is. I'm just saying. You'll have to guess. Haha. Yeah, that's the episode. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us on iTunes, Spotify. I don't know. Do that shit.
You know what I can't wait for?
Your mama to come over.
Shut up.
What's up?
I can't wait for in 20 years when all the Among Us babies grow up from quarantine and then they watch The Thing and they're going to be like, whoa, Among Us. And then they're going to be like, that's just perfect movie for quarantine because they're locked in a place and like they don't, it's sus.
Yeah.
That would be good.
That would be good.
God, you guys are so embarrassing.
What?